Okay, so we're speaking about this idea that actually appears in the Talmud. It focuses on one Hebrew word, and the word is listot, which means to deviate. In fact, they say that the word Satan, that we all know, Satan, comes from that word. Satan is the deviator, the one who causes people to deviate from their pathway, from what they are supposed to do in life. Let me just clarify that the way Judaism views the Satan is very different than the way non-Jews view the Satan. Non-Jews or other religions view the Satan. Other religions think that the Satan has some independent power. We believe that everything comes from God. There is no other independent power than God. So when God instructs the Satan to act, that's when he can go and deviate people from their path. But again, it's the same word. Listot, Satan, Sin, Tet. In Hebrew, those are the letters that are at the root word. And at the same time, those are the letters also for the word Shtut, Shin, Tet. Shtut, which means folly. And from here, the Talmud derives that a person doesn't sin unless a spirit of folly has permeated him. That's when you sin. Because a person really doesn't want to sin. But for 1 second, he forgets who he is, what he's supposed to do, the pathway that he's supposed to be on. And that folly is what causes him to sin. Now, the Beinoni has full control of his animal soul, if you recall. But he still has that spirit of folly that can permeate, but he's able to immediately reject it from his heart, where the spirit of folly really begins. Maybe this is also why when we say in the 3rd paragraph of the Shema that we shouldn't deviate, again, the word to deviate or to be disaligned, maybe, then we say lo taturu, if you recall the phrase, lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. You should not be, taturu really means deviating. You shouldn't be deviating, or you shouldn't be touring. It's interesting because it's almost the same word in English. Tatur, latour is to tour. You shouldn't be touring or exploring that which is permeating in your heart and that which your eyes are seeing. Don't be deviating from your pathway in life because of what you feel in your heart or because of what you see with your eyes. Starts with the heart. And here the Tanya again says that the permeation of that folly is in the heart, as he says here on page 300. But again, the Beinoni is able to immediately reject them. Nonetheless, and this is really what differentiates the Beinoni from the Tzaddik, it's still not good to have a spirit of folly, even in the heart or even in the mind, even though you're able to reject it. And as the Tanya says, that's because the thoughts that we have are very much a part of our essence. As the Baal Shem Tov famously said, and I think we've spoken about this, and that is that if you want to know where the person stands, look at his thoughts. That's where the person really stands. If you want to know where you stand, look at your thoughts. What are you thinking about all day long? If you're thinking about news all day long, then that's where you stand. If you're thinking about your own spiritual refinement, that's when you stand. That's where you stand. So it's still dangerous to have these spirits of folly permeate the heart and the mind, because in many ways, even though you're not judged by them, because they're not translated into action, still, they reflect that your essence is still not where it's supposed to be. Anyway, that's the big idea. Let's continue then on page 301. Does anyone want to?
Can I ask you a question first?
Please, of course.
When you say heart, what do you mean? Like when we say mind, we mean thoughts or our thinking. When you say heart, do you mean our emotional state?
Right. So in this context, the heart here really refers to the whole emotional world, the world of feelings. That can be a very wild and boisterous world. So let's go back to what the Talmud says, that a person doesn't sin unless a spirit of folly has permeated him. Usually a spirit of folly enters the heart because if the heart is wild with emotions, then it almost eclipses the mind. And then we lose clarity. And in that state of confusion, then we can sin. So yes, I'm in that world of emotions. Yeah. Good question. Good question. Okay, let's continue. By the way, I encourage discussion here, right? Remember, this is supposed to be a dialogue, not a monologue. So feel free to ask your questions, speak your mind, speak your hearts, even if the world of emotions is wild. Okay. Otherwise, let's continue. 301. Does anyone want to read? Where exactly in 301? Amy, Margot.
We had stopped where it says such thoughts can plague the Benoni in the middle.
Okay.
That was from 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so right there, right in the middle. Such thoughts can plague the Benoni, as the sages have said.
Right.
Does anyone want to read? Please. So these are thoughts that are unwelcome thoughts from that spirit of folly that we're speaking about. So thoughts like this can plague the Benoni. Let's continue. Middle of page 301. Anyone?
I'll read.
Please, Jordan. Thank you.
As our sages have said, there are 3 sins against which a man, not necessarily a Rasha, but also a person in the basic state of man, a Benoni, is daily not safeguarded: sinful thoughts, lack of concentration in prayer. The 3rd sin is the semblance of slander. Sinful thoughts, as we said, are not thoughts of actually committing a sin, but merely the contemplation of sinful things. Concentration in prayer is the failure to properly concentrate on one's prayers due to distraction. The semblance of slander is not actually speaking ill of others, which is an outright sin that one can and must avoid at all times, but the semblance of slander, that is, talk that might, in some roundabout way, imply something negative about someone else, which is virtually impossible to avoid.
Right. And so, by the way, the Talmud says that these are 3 sins that is impossible to avoid every day. So, sinful thoughts, concentration in prayer, and semblance of slander, as he says here, which is interesting, because really that's where the human universe is. And what's interesting about these 3 specific sins is that they are all in the realm of either thought or speech, not action. Right? Concentration in prayer is the thought, or slander is the speech, and again, sinful thoughts is thoughts. So you might think, as the Tanya here is emphasizing, that okay, as long as it's not in the realm of action, then we're okay, we're good, because we are what we do, as we've often said, we're judged by our actions. So I'm the perfect human being. But no, if the Benoni must constantly strive to refine himself, even in the realm that is not judged. And in that realm that is not judged, you find those 3 sins that are very, very common. They're so common that they happen every day. But you still have to work on yourself so that those 3 sins are completely obliterated, as hard as it may be, right? I just want to add one thing just about these 3. I would say that the common denominator, they're very different. Again, 2 speak of thought, 1 speaks of speech. But the common denominator between all 3, if you think about this, is the disalignment, as we've said, the deviation from one's path. Thoughts should be aligned with yourself, aligned with your neshama, with your soul. Same with concentration in prayer. You should be aligned with God. Speech, you should be speaking about yourself. Should be, again, aligned. The speech should be aligned here. These are 3 things that take you away from yourself. And I think that's very relevant in our day and age, because we have so many things that take us away from ourselves. And they act through these 3 channels: concentration in prayer, sinful thoughts, and slander. That's the way the world is constructed today, right? You open an email, you have Google ad already distracting you, five ads. And you go and read a news article and you have another 20 ads there. And then on social media, let's not even talk about it. but there's this constant pool of deviation that works, interestingly enough, through these three channels. Sinful thoughts, I don't need to elaborate on that, but concentration in prayer, sometimes our minds float everywhere, specifically in prayer. All the things that we didn't think of, all of a sudden we think of in prayer. And slander, instead of speaking really about, like Roosevelt says, about ideas, we speak about people. We don't even speak about events. We speak about people that take us away from ourselves. So that's the common denominator between these three, and how this age of distraction works through these three channels. And therefore, even more careful we have to be about it, even though, again, we're not judged by them. Right? Okay. Okay, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Love to hear your disagreements, even. Or comments. Yes, Amy. Please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself if you want to speak also, yeah. Mute.
Oh, sorry, I thought he did.
No, no problem.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were explaining them, maybe there's another common denominator, and that's practice. All three of those things as human beings, we don't like unconsciously have control over. We have to bring consciousness to all three of them. It's like a practice.
Practice to get rid of them.
To improve in all three of those areas.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like we have to be conscious of our thoughts. We have to be conscious of when we're
Right.
praying or meditating and the mind strays off and you're like, oh, the mind strayed off again. Okay. And
Right.
then bring yourself back. The same thing with I think with slander, that one's newer to me, because that's not speaking slander, it's thinking slander before you even say it. But yeah, when you think it, you want to try to turn that around before it becomes speech. And that takes practice to notice that that's what you're thinking. Right.
And maybe that's the other common denominator, that the best way to treat all three of them is not to engage with them. If you have a sinful thought, don't start thinking, is this maybe good? Is this justified? Just say no. Just shut off that thought. Same with concentration in prayer. Your mind starts floating. Just say no. Focus on God. Focus on the prayer. And same with slander. Don't start, oh, maybe there is something good about this person. Maybe I actually meant it this way. No, just shut up. Just don't say anything. Just say no. So in many ways, that's another deeper common denominator, the way we initially have to treat them. Just shut it off. I was just in Atlanta last week. Someone told me something that's quite cute. He said that God created us with 248 limbs and 365 organs, according to Kabbalah, which correspond to the 613 mitzvot. 248 plus 365 is 613. But he says there's two limbs that he should have created too. He should have had 615. What limbs? Says a switch of on and off in the heart and a switch of on and off in the mind. That sometimes it's just good to have a switch here and put it off. And even here in the world of feelings, just off. Not always, of course, that's why it's a switch. Sometimes you have to put it on. By many ways, with these three things, all you want to do is just off. That's it. Would have been much easier. Life would have been much easier with that switch. Okay, good. Thank you. Yes. Let's continue. Bottom of 301. Unless, of course, please speak your minds. But otherwise, okay, 301.
Okay, these sins are not committed intentionally, and they are extremely difficult to avoid even with a concentrated effort and the exercise of the mind's sovereignty over the heart. Their occurrence is inherent to the state of Benoni, whose inner self has not undergone any fundamental change. The evil within him is under the control of the good, but it has not been transformed into good. It continues to ferment within him and gives him no rest. In the same way that the good remains within the Rasha and fills him with regrets, giving him no rest, so too does the evil in the Benoni constantly plague him, exposing him daily to the three sins.
Right. Now let's remember, we're speaking about a Benoni. A Benoni is someone who's in full control of his animal soul. We're not just speaking about someone who's still struggling in that realm. There's a person this is a status that we have to aim to achieve. Yet even there, even in that high status, there is still that struggle because he hasn't yet transformed the evil into good. And therefore the evil still speaks to him through those three channels that are common each and every day. But I think the point here, there's two major points that jump from this text of this commentary of Rabbi Steinsaltz. One is that there's no such thing as peace of mind, as reaching a level in which we can rest on our laurels and say, okay, we've arrived. No, life is a constant struggle of refinement, of constantly working on ourselves, even if that self is that deeper self, the world of the world of thought, and the world of speech. World of actions I might be in control of, but still, there's a constant struggle there in those two other realms. That's number one. So to achieve a state of serenity, complete serenity, maybe doesn't exist for the Benoni, which could be disencouraging, but still, I think it just shows that we are given the opportunity every single day to grow, and growth demands effort and strength. So we should embrace that journey of growth. Graves, people in graves, cemeteries don't grow. Dead trees don't grow. People that are alive can grow. So we are given the opportunity to grow. Yes, growth comes with struggle, so we should embrace it. That's number one. That's the first message that jumps from here. Number two, it also reminds us that we have to, in many, many ways, we have to work on our, on the things that maybe are most unnoticed. Because as Rabbi Steinsaltz told a very good friend of mine who became a public speaker, he said to him, look, after 20 years, 30 years, you'll be able to speak so well that all you'll need is the organizer of the event to tell you just before you get up on stage what title you're speaking about, and then you'll be able to give a speech that will mesmerize the audience for an hour. But then the next morning you'll wake up and you'll go brush your teeth and you'll see yourself in the mirror, and all you'll see is a mouthpiece moving. And then you'll know that you're officially dead. But what this passage here is reminding me of that story, because as we said, we have to work on ourselves all the time. And in order to truly become that Benoni, to truly become that, we have to know that through struggle comes life, comes the whole body, and everything that we need to work on. Through struggle, we don't become a mouthpiece. Through struggle, we really make something of ourselves. And we really, in many ways, accomplish the mission for which we were created. So not only is struggle eternal for the Benoni, which is message one, but struggle should be embraced because it makes us really the person that we are meant to be, makes us alive, and ensures that we don't become a mouthpiece. And that's the other big message, I think, that jumps from this passage. So yes, we might struggle with all sorts of things, especially in those three sins, but let's embrace it. And that's how the Benoni really indeed becomes a Benoni. He doesn't shy away from them. I just want to, it's coming to mind, but I just want to also maybe fine-tune one of those three sins that we can avoid each day. It's interesting because we speak of sinful thoughts, hirurei avera, which I don't know if the translation is too accurate, because Hirurei Avera, which is what the Talmud says in Hebrew, obviously, is not thoughts of sins. Hirur is much less than thoughts. See, thoughts in Hebrew is really machshavot. So we would have to say, if we were really speaking about sinful thoughts, the Talmud would have to said machshavot shel avera, thoughts of sin. But it says hirurim, and I think that the better translation for hirurim is not thoughts, but it's rather sprinkles. You don't even have time to chew on them so that they become thoughts. Just sprinkles. They're there, you know, floating and maybe tickling your mind. It's not thoughts. Thoughts is something that you really chew on that permeate your mind. This is not even that. It's just like a drizzle. Hirurim. And even that we have to work on. Thoughts we definitely have to work on, but when you read the original Hebrew, it's much more powerful. Even if you have sprinkles, that means you haven't really arrived. It's not thoughts, just tickle. But you still have to work on those too. Okay, let's continue, or maybe one more line, or one last comment or idea by anyone here. Okay, one more line, just to maybe finish on a positive note.
Okay.
Yes.
When a person studies and prays and attains a state of attachment to God, even if only temporarily, the memory of it remains. Even if he does not repeat the experience, the influence of that occasion lingers within him. An impression remains, and some change takes effect within his soul.
Right. So as it is true in the negative, it's true in the positive. And if we can immerse ourselves more and more in positivity, then that in of itself will have an effect, not just on our actions, but on our mind, as we spoke about in our speech. It might not have a permanent effect that we will feel and think of all the time, but it will always still be there. As he says, it will linger within him. You know, we just came from Purim, and there's a fascinating commentary on some words that are just incomprehensible in the story of Purim, because it says that Esther had a meal with Achashverosh, the king, and Haman, the evil advisor, Adolf Hitler of the time. And after that meal, the first meal that she had with them, it says that Haman came out sameach v'tuv lev, happy and good-hearted. Of course, the question is, how can you say that an Adolf Hitler is good-hearted? This is a man who wanted to wipe out the entire Jewish nation. You can say he was happy, he was maybe, you know, gleeful, but good-hearted? And the answer, as the Hasidic masters teach, it's just very powerful. That yes, he was good-hearted for a fleeting moment. Why was he good-hearted? Because he had just had a meal with Queen Esther. The holiness of Queen Esther, the goodness of Queen Esther affected him, even the Adolf Hitler of the time. It affected him for a temporary moment, but it was able to permeate even the greatest of evil. And this is what this is saying, that even a moment of prayer can affect a person and linger with him, and eventually really refine that world of thoughts and world of emotions, and certainly the world of actions. So we can never underestimate the power of one good deed, of one mitzvah, of one moment of holiness, like Haman had, because it can permeate the thickest of walls. And that, in many ways, is also the remedy for the Beinoni who's still struggling with those three channels. To just immerse yourself in holiness. It's certainly a message for all of us. Not just surround yourself with good people, but also surround yourself with good and holy moments, whether it's prayer or mitzvahs. And that will linger on and on and on, eventually begin to truly rid ourselves of negativities and elevate us to higher and higher realms of holiness.